What's up, everybody? Got to get the momentum going here. We got to keep up the momentum. The last two episodes setting new high marks for the year. Got a lot of great feedback about both of them. The last one was a little scatterbrain, but the point of it, of course, is being, sometimes you just feel like you've kind of gone astray in your hobby, journey. You find yourself kind of, too far away from what it is that brought you here to begin with. And you kind of got to recenter. And I call that one the hobby multiverse. And, you might be Spider-Man in this universe, but in an alternate one, I don't know what the hell you are. And you kind of get lost. And it's, important to recenter every once in a while. And the one before that just blew the doors off about, is your LCS going to close? And that was kind of a trip down memory lane for me, talking about how I could draw a correlation between, a hobby when I grew up in the 80s and early 90s and the boom and bust and, the opening of all the LCSs and the closing of all these LCSs, and just kind of drawing a correlation between what I saw then and what I'm seeing now, and making comparison. So many people love the talk about the different cards and remembered chasing the same cards, and how the industry kind of went from collecting to just chase and almost sort of a gambling. Sound familiar? So if you haven't listened to those, take a listen. Today, man, if that title is not a hook for you guys to get you in there, we talk about a topic that's been around for a while. Basketball card guy John did a great job, with some stories talking about it today, and harken back to an episode I did almost a year ago where I started talking about this, and put my opinion out there. It's funny because I've got a lot of questions about this, and it's come to the fore. Cleaning cards, putting things on cards, you name it, with the Wemby 1 of 1, going to PSA, getting a PSA 10, and getting a shout out to Kurt's Card Care. Kurt, I might mention you in this episode. I check in and watch the Wednesday lives that you do. If you guys, how would you feel about the cards? How do you feel about, putting stuff on the cards and you name it? Do your research. Check out one of his lives on Wednesday. It's basically like watching a museum do art restoration. And you watch enough of those and you start to really question a lot of things. I personally question a lot of things. I've done that in an episode already. I don't want to rehash that. The topic today is an interesting one, right? And I'm going to draw a correlation because it's funny. I've had this conversation over DM. Also, yes, that's an Arena Club Bleecker sweatshirt. It's one of my favorite sweatshirts because I'm fat and it's baggy. But I don't get $1 from either of these guys. It's just a nice sweatshirt. Just make sure I throw that out there. I get $1 from anybody. I don't even get $1 from. I got to give my dollars away to be in this hobby. Anyway, so getting the DMs, lots of DMs. And what's funny is the hobby purists have changed. Like, it used to be the hobby purists were the guys at the card show who sat with their vintage books of 1960s commons trying to charge money for them, even though they were beat up, and they just sat there like this, dribbling food and boogers all over themselves, and they got their books of cards, and whether they sold something or not, they didn't care. Those were the hobby purists. These are the guys who, when grading started, used to tell me, I don't need to grade. I can grade I know what cards are excellent. I know what cards are near mint. I don't need somebody to tell me what my card grade is. These are the purists. And what's funny is we've gone from the 80s and 90s to now we're in the 2020s. And the hobby purist, nay, can I say gatekeeper? I mean, am I going to throw myself in this category? I don't even know. I'm not a gatekeeper. That's a dirty word, but you know what I'm saying. The folks that are the vintage collectors now, the folks that have carried that torch to the next generation, the guys who are in their 40s now and their 50s. What's funny is when they bring up this card cleaning, chemical, rubbing down the card, giving, a card job to the card, getting it all creamed up, all nice, right? Hey, my son's giving me the hairy eyeball over there. So I say one thing to him. I go, listen, let's just table that topic for a second. Let's talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame, because nothing gets an old man going like talk about who should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And you know what's funny is when you get to Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and you get to Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and Jeff Bagwell and Big Papi and A-Rod and you name it, you get all these guys, the conversation gets a little crazy. But the folks who are in their 40s and 50s and stuff, the line that I heard the most in my DMs and in the conversations I have is, well, it wasn't banned. You could see McGwire doing interviews when he was breaking the records, and, he had the Andro in his locker. And it wasn't illegal. And you don't really know if they were doing it or not doing it because, they weren't really testing for it, and there was no way of telling if what they were doing was right or wrong. It was gray area. So, that should count and they should be let in. And then some people have a bright line demarcation of, well, A-Rod, he failed a test, and this guy never failed a test. But Barry Bonds was like in an investigation, and that's a problem. And I said, what's funny is you have all of these little caveats and rules and the whole deal. But when we talk about, cleaning a card or using a solution on a card, I said, no, forget it. No, can't do it. Well, I draw the correlation to the steroid era because a lot of people did it because everyone was doing it. There's my sentence. There's my premise. I read a piece about Barry Bonds that said that he would have been a Hall of Famer lock first ballot if he never used steroids, if he never did anything. He never did the performance-enhancing drugs. He was a 40-40 guy basically before that, and one of the best fielders that was out there. But he was on the sidelines as one of the best players in baseball watching Sammy Sosa, who was not. He was not one of the best players in baseball, but he just went from a skinny guy to a monster who could power home runs out at a clip no one had ever seen before. And Mark McGwire, who was never small, but obviously became a monster. And everybody wanted home runs. So I could almost understand that Barry Bonds on the sideline saying, wait a second, if everyone's doing it, I want to do it too. And no one's saying I can't. So I'm going to do it. Because I want to go out there and I want to be known as the best player of all time. I want to go and hit the home runs. And if no one's saying no to them, well, they're not going to say no to me too. And there's a lot of that in the hobby. There's a lot of people now who are cleaning cards, soaking cards. We could do a 10-episode piece about this. Talk about where the differences are. Is soaking the card okay? Right? Is dropping it in a cleaning solution okay? It gets some of the dimples out. Is rubbing a chemical and polishing the card okay? Obviously no one's saying trim the card, cut the card, all that stuff. Well, there are people who are saying that's okay too. But I'm sure we could come up with a bright line. But here's the fun part. Has the hobby come up with a bright line? Is there a test for this? Is that being worked on? Is that something that PSA wants? Because let's take it to its next conclusion. If you haven't looked at Kurt's page in a while, take a look. There's a 53 top Satchel page that was deemed SGC altered. SGC authentic. It didn't say min size, didn't say evidence of trimming. It was just an SGC. I think it was an altered new SGC slab. And he did his thing to it. Now, anybody who used to have cards in the big, thick lucite, myself included, had some Shaqs in those and some Drew Bledsoes, which ultimately just came back min sized, by the way. So think about that. Anybody who had those like real hard plastics that kind of squeeze the corners of the cards, sometimes when you send those in for gradings, taking them straight out of those plastics, they come back as altered because the corners look compressed. And I think what he was able to do was soak the card so that those compressed corners were no longer compressed. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm like 99% sure, but I think he sent it right back to SGC and I got a 6. On that card, that is a monster grade with a monster card. Now, I watched what he did with the card. I want you to watch what he did with the card. Because it's very easy to talk from the sidelines. Kurt's card care. Put the chemicals on the card. Watch what actually got done to this card. It's kind of soaked in a solution in water. I ask you, if you're getting your cards ready to grade and you happen to be drinking a cup of water and you spill some water on the top of a prism card, right? And you, oh my God, you catch your water, you grab your paper towel, maybe the microfiber that you got there, and you quickly dry off the water on the card. Are you not sending that card in? You just cleaned it. You just changed how that card came out of a pack. Some could say you damaged it and then fixed the damage. Obviously, that's an oversimplification. These cards have been damaged over time. Originally graded, they were damaged and altered, and now they're coming back not damaged and altered. My biggest question on this is it in a grading company's best interest to come up with a test for this and say, we're not going to let you do it? I submit to you, the answer is no. Think about what I just said. Someone found an SGC authentic, altered 1953 Satchel Paige. And they cracked it out, did some stuff to it. Watch the video. I'm not going to give you what I think was right or wrong or what the story is. Watch the video. Sent it back into the same grading company who has already charged someone to grade that card and put it in a slab. That same card is going back and being regraded, reslabbed, and charged again. Now in PSA, if this happened, not only is it going to be re-slabbed, regraded, recharged, it's going to now be upcharged as well. So from a business standpoint, if I'm PSA, I sit there like this with my hands folded saying, keep doing your thing, guys. Because really what you're doing is you're widening the universe of cards that they get to charge you for. Cards that they've already charged you for, that are in a slab, cracked, bring it back. There is a whole cottage industry of people out there who have accounts telling you that if you got 9s on a card, you should send it to them because they will get you a 10. PSA's got to love that. SGC's got to love that. Because that's a card they should never make another dollar on. They've already charged someone to grade and encapsulate that card. Now they get the same card back and do it again. Just like MLB looked the other way when Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were hitting moonshots and baseball was saved from the strike. And when Barry Bonds was out there breaking home run records, and they were also breaking attendance records and setting viewership records, and MLB looked the other way, the same thing is going to happen here. Because it's in their best interest to not do anything about it except continue to accept it. But here's my fun little conclusion. I view this as one last ditch effort for people to squeeze a little bit of cash out of this hobby. I think it's an interesting thing to think about if you have money here. Now, if you are someone who collects and someone who wants to own your cards and someone who just wants to, take a nice hot bath, throw a little bath bomb in and put your PMGs along the side of the bath and, put on some jazz and take a look at your Del Curry and Christian Laettner PMGs and, get all romantic with your cards. This is not you. You don't care. You don't care what your cards are worth. Those cards do something else for you. You know what I'm talking about. But for the 90% of the people out there who came into this hobby because they thought of it as an alternate asset class, as a way to kind of have a little bit of a flippy dippy game, a way to have some additional income, as a way to grind and hustle, mug life style. This is just the most recent way to do it. But really, we're just squeezing that last drop out, aren't we? Right? This is all right. Well, it's not as easy to break now because you can't really, make as much money from breaking as you did. So we're going to head over to repacking. And, you can't make as much from the repacking. So, we're going to set up at stores, and we're going to, we're going to set up at shows, and we're going to buy at 60% and sell at 80%. So you have all of these fun little things that folks were doing, grade base cards, all those things have kind of run their course. And this seems to be the flavor of the day. Let's find some cards that we can rub some crap on and regrade them and squeeze some money out of it. The problem is this will run its course too. And you're going to lose some folks along the way. A summary of the episode that I did the first time around on this was I watched Kurt's Cards Care videos, and it changed my entire outlook of my son just picked up the Chick-fil-A from Uber Eats. So, yeah, it changed my whole outlook. A little spicy chicken sandwich here on the hobby, because I always wanted a 52 tops mantle in a 7. I was able to buy a 5 for myself at one point. I always wanted a 7. And I said, after watching these videos, I don't want a 7. I might as well just buy a 4. Because chances are that the 7 that I'm buying was someone else's 4. And that it just became a 7. Now, in the modern world, that's even scarier. Because chances are, my son will eventually find the chicken nuggets in that bag. But chances are, you got them, okay, good. Chances are that you're buying a 10, that might have been a 9 that somebody just rubbed some of that cream on. And that's a scary thing. That's a scary thing to try to explain. It's a scary thing to try to tell people. And the scariest thing is there's so much content on it being made now, myself included. I'm guilty as well. And when you talk about bringing people into this hobby, you talk about people coming in, Bitcoin's having its run, and my dentist wants to talk to me about buying Bitcoin because he knows that I've been buying it for a long time, and my great aunt wants to buy it, and my coworkers want to hear about Bitcoin, and everybody talking about, that sounds good now. Look at all the good press there is. There's ETFs about it, and, people are changing their stance on it. It looks like it's got a future. Yeah, go ahead and do some research. Go look at CNBC. Go read some articles. If somebody came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about, coming back into the hobby. I think about spending some money here. Or, somebody, from Wall Street, or, somebody has some money and, somebody would want here. And I said to them, go check out content. The last couple of weeks of content, all they'd be hearing about is rubbing stuff on cards. and I think anybody with half a brain is going to run the other way screaming, saying, what the heck is this? What kind of crazy place is this? Because it's very hard to put your money into something where this garbage is going on. It makes it difficult. Now, a step back from that. I call it garbage is going on. From a personal standpoint, without discussing what I think about this, I think some of the transformations on these cards are absolutely stunning. They are eye-opening. They are amazing, especially on the vintage cards that have dirt, years of dirt soaked into them, wrinkles taken out of them. I mean, you name it. Just, it is amazing. But what's just as amazing to me is that after I watch these videos and I take time to think about it myself, it makes it harder for me to want to keep as much money tied up in these cards as I do. Maybe the fix is buying something that is scarce and the grade doesn't matter. There are a lot of people who have been talking about that who also buy real scarcity, buy, cards that are really limited, numbered, and, one of ones and golds out of 10, because it doesn't matter if you clean it, if you rub your chemicals on it, or, whatever you do to it, it's still going to have value no matter what. Maybe that's an interesting thing to think about. Maybe that is, the upshot of this, right? That those cards, they become safe havens. There's a flight to quality there. It used to be the bellwethers. It used to be the indicators were those high-level vintage cards. But to me, some of the stuff that we're seeing now out in public, we've had talks about trimming and altering and that kind of stuff, but now this is the cleaning and you name it. It does, people have asked me this, I might as well just tell you, it does make it harder for me to want to own vintage cards, which are my favorite. They are the cornerstones of my collection. I don't want to own a Mantle 52 Topps and a PSA 7 anymore. I don't. And that's a scary thing to think about, because that was always like a North Star for me. That was always sort of like a goal, like go ahead and collect and build up to that and, save some money and put it aside and ultimately make sure you have one of those, because that's an amazing piece. It's something I always wanted, as a kid. It's a card I always wanted as a kid. Now, maybe I just buy a 2 that looks nice. And I don't have to worry about whether or not it was somebody else's authentic, because at that point, who cares? There's my take on it, guys. I hope you like the steroid comparison. It's just something I think about. There are no rules about this. There are no rules in the hobby. There are no regulations here. It is the Wild Wild West. And in the Wild Wild West, sometimes the people who had the most power were the most ruthless ones, the ones who were able to operate outside the law the best and avoid being caught, or the ones who were able to realize that in the Wild Wild West, there was no law yet. So they were able to take whatever they wanted to take. And for lack of a better way of saying it, that is this space. That is this hobby. There is no law here, especially not on this particular issue. And when there's no law, people will push the envelope. How far they can push it, it's up to you. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Let me know what you think. And let me know what you think is too far. Put it in the chat. Send me a DM. I've been talking to people about this for the last week, basically. I'll talk to you guys soon. Check out the news. And yes, Cage 6, the rumor section, will be coming back for its second episode this week. I got one heck of a juicy rumor to share with you guys. Talk to you soon, everybody.